Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. This is Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, episode 772, with my guest today, Shihan Victor Guarino. I'm Jeremy Lesniak. I'm your host here for the show, founder of Whistlekick, where everything we do is in support of traditional martial arts. Go to whistlekick.com. That's our online home. It's the place you're going to find all the stuff that we're doing in support of the traditional arts and in support of traditional artists like yourself. The show gets its own website, whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. 2 episodes each and every week with the goal of connecting, educating, and entertaining all of you out there. If you want to show your appreciation for the work that we do, you can do a whole bunch of things. You can follow us on social media. We're at Whistlekick everywhere you might imagine. You could grab a book on Amazon, or you could join our Patreon. We rarely have people leave our Patreon, which should be all you need to know. It's about how much we give back. It's about the value that we provide to those of you who are willing to provide some value to us. And you can get in for as little as $2 a month. Now, if you want the entire list, all the things you can do to help us in our mission to derive more value from what we do here at Whistlekick with this show, go to the family page, whistlekick.com/family. You got to type it in. We do that intentionally. If you're willing to type it in, you're probably going to find some stuff that you find value in. We update it once a week. Now, my guest today, Victor, I've been getting to know him over the last few months. Great guy. Really like what this man stands for. And, well, it was time. It was time for me to get to know him a bit better. Time for all of you to get to know him. And that's why he's here today. So enjoy today's episode.
So
How'd the move go?
it went well. Things are going, they're settling in to
Good.
for lack of any other way of explaining it. We tried to introduce the dogs the other day.
How'd that go?
Not well at all.
No.
Apparently, even though my dog is 3 times smaller than her pure-blooded German Shepherd, my dog is from the streets of Florida and does not like being barked at, and had no issue saying, I'm going to saunter right on over there and prove that I'm not a small dog. They both were on drugs. We gave them both CBD treats, a lot for their sizes. Like we gave it a half an hour, let them all kick in, and we had them all on leashes, and we were walking them just around the yard. Yeah. And then we were sitting, and normally, like, my dog Echo, very passive. Not passive, but like if the dog is ignoring her, that's what she wants, and she'll stay away from it. So Karen had her dog on leash, and she's like, why don't you just let Echo go, and we'll just let Echo wander around, and I'll get classy to lay down. We did, and Echo was calm. She wasn't like loaded. She didn't have any anxiety. She just got up, walked in a straight line, just casually across the yard. And as soon as she started getting closer to the bigger dog, like, Classy started barking. So Echo did the most martial arts thing I've ever seen any animal do. She just stopped, made the perfectly around circle, and then immediately just sprung in and grabbed at the bigger dog's like rear hindquarters. Wow. And then as soon as Classy twisted, Echo just, like, she strafed sideways right out of reach.
Oh, what a ride.
Took 3 steps in her continued circle, jumped back in, snapped again, and she just kept dodging, like, in and out. I was like, I've taught my dog too well. I've taught my dog too well how to fight, on how to stay out of reach. So then, obviously, I grabbed her. I took my dog inside. She let Classy just run around off leash in the backyard. And we're like, you know what? It's gonna be a little bit longer. So we just need to get them to the point where they ignore each other.
Yeah.
If they can be in the same room and ignore each other, that's fine. Karen said that she's introduced her dog to other dogs before, and her dog doesn't like dogs. But she's never come across another dog that had just as big of a dominant attitude as her. Every other dog has just been very submissive. So Classy will just pin him to the ground. The dog will like submit and then it's done.
Yeah.
It's over. Echo is not that. Echo is very much thinks that she's a large dog. Her best friend when I was in Florida was a full-blooded, almost 200-pound pit bull. And she would fight dog. And she would fight him. Like they would scrap just for kicks and giggles. And wow. So that's what Echo is used to. And she's smart. Like I watched her. So the pit bull's name is Noah, playing in Noah's backyard. I watched her bite this pit bull's butt to get him to chase her. And she's got little hot dog legs. So she's really fast. And when she got the bigger dog to chase her, she ran beeline straight for a tree. And she can corner on a dime. She knew the pit bull couldn't. So she would run straight at the tree and then bank. And when the pit bull tried to bank, it tripped over itself and ran and smashed into that tree. Bounced off the ground, shook off. Everything was fine. But she's a smart and intuitive fighter for a dog who's never been in a fight.
That's such a riot.
So, other than that little excitement, everything else with the move is going well.
I kind of want video of all this.
Yeah. We did make the wise choice to not have the Karen's kids in the backyard with us. Would have been bad. No blood, like nothing. No one clamped down on anything, but it just, they wouldn't have liked it. They would have been.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary as adults. It's really scary as kids.
Yeah. So it was all right though. You know, good. Well, back to the drawing board, I guess.
Yeah. Got to do it. What's training looking like for you? Have you had a chance, or are you still in the midst of the unpack and the finding the routine?
We finally dropped into it. Last week was a week where nothing went the way that it was supposed to go. I've been using Google Calendar to kind of keep myself on track for myself, because I only go in and move dog food 3 times a week in the morning. And so when I'm here, I have, set times when I'm doing stuff, and so that I actually sit and do things and don't waste time. And last week was a week where everything in my Google Calendar, I had to go in, edit it, and move it to a different day. But with the exception of last week, Karen and I have been training pretty consistently, twice a week. And I have her through. What she's trying to do is she's trying to gain what she feels is adequacy in the style that I teach, so that she can assist me in teaching it, which it just basically involves me bringing her through the testing requirements of all the ranks. So last night we just started the yellow belt testing requirements, and we started the day by having her do all of what would be the first test, her senior white belt testing requirements. And I ran, the last 2 to 3 times that we've gotten together to like set time to work out, I told her, I'll do it like a test. This is what I want you to show me. How do you want me to attack you? Yeah. Just to see how she retains. And she has most of it. Some of the other like escapes and stuff that we do, my system does, from bear hug, chokehold, headlock and stuff, she feels a little uneasy. Like she can do it, but she doesn't feel like she can do it quickly. And that's fine. That stuff is really all introductory stuff anyway, because I'm not sure if I've ever talked to you about like what the Seigido Ryu testing requirements look like, but in essence, I don't think so. It's tricking you into earning a rank in 2 different styles. So there's a lot of stuff that we call generically escaping in the first few ranks that seems um very like you do it and then you come to this place where you have the thought of that's it. Like it feels very incomplete because it is very incomplete. It's really the first part of how to get out of something to enter back into a jiu-jitsu lock.
Yeah, I get it.
So in essence, like we just had two black belts in our system test. I think number 38 and 37 who have made it to first degree. And technically their rank is they have first degrees in karate. They are probably about a first or second Q brown belt in traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
They don't know that
Right.
because you get all the way through your ranks, and then at your black belt test, you're handed two certificates. And it's the first time you're ever handed two certificates. And I asked that question when I got a black belt because I was like, why am I getting two? And my instructor said, that's your jiu-jitsu certification. That's your karate certification. So generally speaking, for the most part, you're roughly 1 to 2 ranks below the karate in the jiu-jitsu, just because it's a foundational building all in the first couple ranks. It's not like we're teaching you arm bars and leg locks and stuff like that at white belt.
That makes sense.
Though that was my project. I had a project for my 5th dan that was basically has to do something to give back to the system. And all of our jiu-jitsu stuff's not written down, which is terrible. Like it's written down, but it's written down in get armbar from 5 different attacks. Get Nyanagi from 5 different attacks. That's all it is. So my instructor, Kiyoshi, gave me the project and he's like, I want you to go through from white belt through black, our testing requirements as if we didn't teach karate, as if we were just a pure Japanese jiu-jitsu school. And I want you to write down curriculum as if what would we expect a white belt jiu-jitsu practitioner to learn.
Oh, that's interesting. Did you like doing that?
So I didn't like doing it because I don't like jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
I liked doing it because I don't like jiu-jitsu. It was one of those things where, and I even told them this, I was like, you're playing into what I generally tend to do with my own personal training is I find the thing that I either don't like doing or that I'm not good at doing, and I will do that thing until I'm proficient at it. I very rarely train the things that I do well, because I want the things that I don't do well to be so competent. That's why. So when I started, my first fighting instructor was my Uncle Buddy, who has a boxing gym in Philadelphia. So my first experience fighting was boxing at ages 8 or 9
in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
where boxing is like religion.
Right, exactly. So when I started training in my martial art of Seigido Ryu a couple of years later, and we started doing things on both sides, I trained southpaw a lot. Like at my dojo, it helped that my instructor is a lefty, so he does most things left-handed. And then after years of training in Seigido, I went back and started cross training like every week back with my uncle in Philly. So once a week I'd drive up to Philly from New Jersey and train in that. And the first night working on the bag, I sat with my hands like this, and my uncle goes, "You're a lefty?" And I'm like, "No," but that's because this had become so natural to me. So when my instructor told me that for my 5th degree project, because we don't really have tests at that level, it's more time in with a huge emphasis on instruction.
Sure. A lot of schools are like that.
And then it's a project to give back into the system. I like the fact that he gave me something that I don't use when I am in a situation that I need to rely on my mushin, rely on my second nature stuff. Jiu-jitsu's not coming out of me. So I liked the fact that I basically spent a year and a half, 18-ish months focusing very heartily on jujitsu, and it showed,
Did
because my
your
jujitsu increased
yeah,
in its
I'm sure that
proficiency.
and that makes sense. What about your relationship to it? You said you didn't like it as much. Did your affinity for it change? Did you like it a little more?
My affinity for it changed a little bit
Okay.
because of that, but it changed even more so because I've also been cross training in with a gentleman by the name of Mike Martin that I've met through an organization that we're a part of, and I've been trained. He teaches Bagua Zhang, which
Mhm.
is one of the three primary kung fu arts taught in China, of
Mhm.
the internal arts. There's Shini, Tai Chi, and Bagua Zhang,
Mhm.
which is basically based around circle walking. What I did not know, because I care so much more about who I learn from than what I'm learning. That's
Okay.
why I've taken Tai Chi, because I met a guy that I really respected in Florida. He was a really cool guy. I liked his approach to the arts. And he was like, I teach a class. And I was like, I'd love to take it. He's like, I teach
Mhm.
Tai Chi. I'm like, all right, I'll be 25 to 30 years younger than every other person in the class. That's fine. So I wanted to learn from this other guy. And what I discovered, which I did not know about Kung Fu, is it's a lot of grappling.
Mhm.
Like, a lot of what Bagua is just in how to, instead of like what my dog was doing, instead of retreating and coming back in, it's a lot of how to get out of the way of an attack while maintaining your forward motion. So it's a lot of, you're coming at me in a straight line, I'm going to step off and move around you just out of reach so that my direction is moving forward
Mhm.
at all times. And then once I found myself there, I'm like, oh, well, this is a perfect position for this choke or for this arm lock or for this. And it actually, I was just sharing this with him last Wednesday as we were talking. It made my appreciation for jujitsu, especially in a self-defense scenario, it made me appreciate it a lot more because it does a lot of, I'm gonna lock your arm up, wrench you in one direction, and then let you fall and hit the ground, as opposed to what a lot of people think of jujitsu, thanks to things like the UFC and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, is I'm going to hold you and pin you and lock you down. And that's the real thing that I was always uncomfortable with.
Mhm.
I'm not a big guy. I'm not under any illusions that if I'm holding someone on the ground in a pin, that there isn't a world where someone who is big enough and strong enough can't just lift the 135-37 pounds that is me right off the ground.
Yeah.
Right. So I would rather not tangle myself up in that.
Makes total sense, especially
Use the jujitsu. Yeah.
when we remember that attackers are generally bigger, right? Like
Right.
it tends to work out that way. And yeah,
You're not attacked by someone smaller than you,
it's pretty
generally
rare.
speaking.
It's
Yeah.
pretty rare unless they're, multiple attacker scenario.
So between those
Yeah.
two things, I really enjoyed. My love for jujitsu kind of increased a little
Mm.
bit, just because I've seen it from a different perspective in the sense of self defense. I've never been big in competition and in tournament fighting. I've had a few tournament experiences right in the beginning of my training that have caused me to be like, this isn't really for me. The simplest of which is I'm a big fan of the calf kick, and just that quick roundhouse kick to the front leg to
Yeah.
off balance them, to back fist someone in the head. I've probably lost more points in point sparring via warning of
Mm.
kicking too low or kicking to the knee than I've actually ever gotten. So that really kind of right away put me a bad taste in my mouth for tournament fighting. And I've always just been more into the lines of, okay, well, how am I going to use this to defend myself? How am I going to use this to whatever? And like I said before, I don't want to be rolling on the ground on concrete. I don't even want to be anywhere lower than hip level with my eyes if I can help it. I want, I heard
I'm with
someone,
you. I feel the same way.
yeah. One of my instructors once said to me was, when someone tells you every fight ends on the ground, you're absolutely right. When you're on the ground and I'm on my feet, that's when the fight ends.
Right.
I'm not going to end on the ground with you. That's if we're both on the ground, the fight's still on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just, but through Bagua, through that thing, I discovered a lot of ways to use what I refer to as combat jujitsu, which is less pins and more. Once I have a lock, I'm going to wrench it so that something either breaks, fractures, or tweaks in the wrong way, or I get your body moving.
Mm.
We have this one technique. Before I moved, my instructor, it was the only thing that we did martial related, and we did it specifically because he refers to it as the victor. Because it is, I don't know how familiar you are with Sankyo, the wrist lock Sankyo. In essence, you get their hand so their palm is down, and then you twist it up underneath. I like to do it from a hook punch. So basically, someone throws a hook punch at my head, and as my Bagua instructor has often said, if someone throws a punch at you, that's a gift. Be a cheerful giver and take that arm. It's yours now. Do with it what you want. And then you slip underneath the arm and you hold their arm. Now, normally you lock it and pin it. I like to hold it and twist it completely underneath so that it breaks at the wrist, at the elbow, and probably dislocates the shoulder. And then I let it go, and then the fight is over unless the person wants to continue to fight with a broken arm. But the whole thing is I would always do that for demos and competitions because the fight's over because I'm on my feet. He may be on his feet, but he has an unworkable arm. And that's how I've always approached my traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. When, people have always asked me when they say, what is Seigido Ryu? The basic answer is it's traditional Japanese karate mixed with traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, and we fight from a kickboxer stance because that's what my instructor did. He was an American kickboxer who got injured 2 weeks before his first professional fight. And so then generally I used to get with the UFC and MMA, I used to get the questions of, so like the Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys, stuff, you do a lot of that ground stuff. And I'm like, no, we do all of the stuff that they do on the ground. I like to do from my feet because I've fallen on concrete. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. I've rolled on concrete and pavement, and it's not enjoyable.
Yeah, I have executed. My instructor, partially because a lot of the other black belts they're construction guys, and a lot of them are retired construction guys. So not only are they older, they were not kind to their bodies over the years. So when it came to teaching the lower ranks, the beginner classes, break falling, I got the job. Also because I learned how to break fall by being thrown a lot. So I learned how to lower my body down, how to be in control of my body while I'm in midair as best as you can. And so I would always start every one of those classes by saying, hey, I know you all are here to learn to punch and kick and fight. What I'm about to teach you, this is the most important thing that you're going to learn in martial arts. I have used break falling more often in my life than any other aspect of my martial arts. I am a klutz. I am a clumsy person. And I remember there was one time in high school where I was, being a cool high school kid, walking backwards, trying to sweet talk a couple girls, and that spot on the curb that bends down, I stepped, fell straight backwards, did the most perfect break fall that you would want. Like if you could record it, I did a beautiful break fall back into a backwards shoulder roll back up onto my feet. And they were all concerned. Are you okay, Victor? Are you okay? And I was totally fine, but I hid my left arm from them because I was bleeding straight down because I slapped concrete, slapped asphalt. Of course you're bleeding, but it's better this back of your head, spine.
You got to pick a spot.
all that stuff. So
How did it go with the girls? Were they impressed?
uh, uh, I was a good friend to them, and they wished that
Oh,
their boyfriends were, like
oh.
me. But
I,
that pretty much was all me in high school anyway. So
I, I get that. I want to go back because we kind of moved over a piece that I think is really important for a few different layers. I mean, you've just moved in
mm-hmm.
with your girlfriend. You had a long distance relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got the new dynamic of that. And on top of that, you're
Mm-hmm.
training together, but
Mm-hmm.
not in a peer sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this to a lot of people is a recipe for disaster. And I suspect just because we've had conversations about a variety of things in the time
Mm-hmm.
that I've known you, this is not something you've just casually decided would happen, that there have likely been conversations
Mm-hmm.
between you and Karen about this and what the parameters are and
Mm-hmm.
anything. And you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll talk about that because it does have a lot to do with my perspective on training and the martial arts in general. And people always are surprised at things. And this last October was my 22nd year
Mm-hmm.
of officially training in traditional martial arts. Like I said, I had a few years boxing before that, but it
Mm-hmm.
was just, I don't know, but it was my 22nd year being a traditional karate guy. And obviously, in that time, my perspective on training has changed immensely. And I tend to hyper focus about some things. And it becomes like a whole part of my being outside of martial arts. Like I used to talk to my students, and I've talked to other people about this, is that I think that everyone should do martial arts for at least 3 to 6 months of their life. Whatever it is, whatever style it is, I think that it's beneficial for everyone. I think, I can't remember if it was high school or if it was college, but I wrote a paper on, like, a persuasive essay on why I think, like in China, American schools should teach a form of martial arts in gym
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to baseball, soccer, just generic climb this rope as fast as you can. I think it would highly be better to do martial arts. Um, but I think that being said, a lot of people do martial arts. There are very few people who I consider martial artists. And the way that I make that distinction is it's the people who martial principles permeate their life. Every conversation that they have is in the context of, you know, the yin and yang of things, or, will balance. I use the term mushin all the time. I was teaching a personal training client of mine, and I said the word, I told him yame out of nowhere, and he looks at me, and I was like, it means stop. I'm sorry. So now when I go and I talk to new clients and
I
stuff
love
like
it.
that, I have to tell them, be like, okay, here's a list of things that I might say in Japanese. I'm sorry. This is what they mean. It's habit. And because of that, I everything that I've done, and I've worked with my instructor. And this goes back, and I'm getting back to the thing with training my girlfriend. I've worked with my instructor. I worked for him for one straight year through the summer, right after I got my black belt. And then again, when I moved back to New Jersey, on and off on jobs, he has a construction renovation company.
Mm-hmm.
He's been frank to me, not just Kiyoshi D'Angelo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I call him Kiyoshi because my brain has a disconnect where whatever you introduce yourself to me the first time I meet you, that's what you are. So I can't disassociate that. But he's my friend. And I've been able to, with him, in a way that a lot of the other black belts, especially the older black belts who started training when they were adults, have been able to do, in the sense of, when we bow to each other and we walk off of the floor, he's not my master.
Mm-hmm.
He's not, like, he's an older man. I still learn a lot from him about life and about things because he's got just a well of experience, but he's my friend.
Mm.
And I grew up with two older sisters. I was friends with a lot of their friends before I had peers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm used to that whole having friends who were different age groups of mine. I used to either have friends who were 2 to 3 years younger than me or 5 to 6 years older than me. And so to me, to have a friend who started training in the martial arts many years before I was born, founded the school that I teach in pretty much the year before I was born, you know?
Yeah.
That's the thing. And so, like, he would always tell me that he appreciated me because when he would try to have that relationship with a lot of other people that were trained under him, they would just tell him what they thought he wanted to hear because he's their instructor and not have a relationship with him. And I'm like, listen, we bowed off the mat. I respect you, but I completely disagree with this. If this is how you want to run your dojo, that's fine. It's your business. You are the business owner. I'll support you in front of the students. And he knows that. But behind closed doors, myself, another one of our black belts who came up the ranks with me, Anthony, he has the same type of relationship. Him and I, so vocal with him about things that we think that he should do, things that we disagree with him with. And because of that relationship, and it helps also a little bit that Karen has a black belt and I respect her as a black belt from another school
Mm. I
in
don't think I
another
knew that.
system. Okay. That the way that I view it is that she's not my student so much as she is working her way through the ranks and getting certified.
That makes sense.
And to definitely make things clear cut, she's not on my list of students. She's on my instructor's list of students back home. Like, we talked to him about this beforehand. I may be teaching her, but when she gets her certificate, my signature is going to be 3 down.
Mm.
There's going to be Kiyoshi's, then a gentleman that
it sounds more like a tutoring relationship, like a
absolutely.
TA,
Yeah,
an assistant professor. This is not her reporting to you. This is you sharing something in support of her pursuing something with him.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's the best way. I had some people tell me when they found out that I was moving here, and they're like, oh man, they're like, you've already got an assistant instructor in her, she may not know your stuff, but she's competent, and you can slap a first on her, in your system. You're a shit Shihan, you're a fifth, you can do that. And I'm like, yeah, uh-huh. One, she would be extremely disrespected by that. If I just handed her a rank.
Mm-hmm. As anyone should be.
I would be extremely disrespecting my instructor by doing that. And then when it came to, like, if within this next year to 18 months, if we open a school, she's going to be teaching, the students are going to be looking at her. Well, she does this technique completely different than you do this technique. Why? If I just hand her the rank and then we call it a day, so in a sense, yeah, I guess a TA, a tutor would be a good way of putting it, because right now I am her access to the techniques, even though a buddy of mine, Anthony, are trying to put together a online teaching program for our instructor. He doesn't know about it yet.
So maybe he won't listen to this.
No, it's fine. Well, so the reason why it started is because one of the black belts moved to, I want to say, Connecticut. Mm-hmm. Ran a school there for a little bit. One of his former students got to about purple belt, stopped training because he went and joined the military. That guy found me and was like, hey, I see that you teach online. And I was like, well, I do teach online, but it's more like I teach cardio kickboxing online. And I teach personal training online. Teaching jujitsu online, super difficult. But it just so happened that Anthony, whose wife is in the Coast Guard, was stationed in the same base that guy worked out of at that time. So I connected them. Stuff happened. He didn't get to train with my martial arts brother before he got to ship out, but he still wants to earn his black belt in our style. He got more than halfway there. So we just started making videos. And then Anthony was like, well, why don't we just make videos and we can just build a website where students have access to certain videos depending on what rank they are, pre-recorded of the testing requirements. So it was kind of this accidental thing that we started working on. And it's not complete yet. I got to film some videos, which I have Karen to help me with, that he wasn't able to do because he doesn't have a partner right now to demonstrate technique on. But this purple belt in the military is going to be kind of like our test dummy for this project. And if it turns out to be well, then it's just another avenue in which we can bring money back into our homeschool. We can make a little bit of money on the side as well. And honestly, it'll probably end up being his fifth Dan helping the system project.
Right on.
So that's kind of where that stands. He's done a lot of work on it. I've done very little, but
what are your thoughts on online training? And let me preface that question. Let me contextualize that question with pre-pandemic. It was almost universally hated. The idea of training online, go to a school, don't do that. And I'd kind of chime in and say, look, everybody's coming from a different place. Sometimes circumstances are different. You know me well enough to know that, I create space. But now I think people have realized, there are some upsides to this. The idea of being able to pause, stop, rewind, watch in detail, watch in slow-mo are really, really cool. And no, you're not going to figure out the mechanics of an arm bar solo unless you're, I don't know, you're like, I'm going to put my wrist in this vise, crank down. And, but there is still some value. And it seems like as an industry, we've come to maybe not accept, but acknowledge that there is some legitimacy there.
Yeah. And it's interesting because about probably, I want to say 2012-ish, 2013-ish, somewhere in that area. I moved to Florida. So I was there for 10 years. I went into a Taekwondo school for about 6 months. Got a guy that I met when I worked at a Chick-fil-A, came through the drive-thru. He knew I trained. We got into a conversation with it. He was like, come, try out. And like, I had no interest in earning rank in Taekwondo, but I wanted to continue training. I wanted to continue my skill and stuff. And that was my avenue. I only did it for a little bit because I wasn't learning anything new. Shouldn't say that. I was learning Taekwondo, but I was already a third in my style. I had been exposed to other Taekwondo-based schools before, within my training. So all of the things that I was learning wasn't increasing my abilities. So time and whatever made me stop being able to train there. Pandemic rolls around and my instructor had to close his doors. But what he started doing, and this is a guy I love him to death, but he's just not technology friendly. Like he's not on Facebook. The school has a Facebook, but he's not on it. He had his daughter set it up. Myself and another couple other gentlemen, we admin it for him just because, he's not on it. And he'll ask us, how's this doing? How's that doing? Like, that's it. And so for the first time, he's closed. Students aren't allowed to go in to this commercial space that we have. And I call it that because he has access to it 7 days a week, even though the school's not open 7 days a week. So during the pandemic, him and a couple other black belts, which just go there and just work out with each other. They felt comfortable enough with each other and that they were okay. And they were the only ones that they were seeing, them and their parents, or in their, not parents, their spouses and families and stuff. And so what he started doing, because some of the students were continuing to pay him during the 3-month shutdown, just out of goodwill, never asked for it, nothing. And so he wanted to give back to them. So they were already at the dojo working out. They just started recording technique. And from his really, really jank smartphone, I started getting text messages of him and some of these other guys that I had trained with, of just technique. And I was like, wow, if these were better quality, I could put them on my computer and we could create an archive, which he does have, but they're all terrible quality. Then he got a better phone.
Well, it's kind of a rule, right? Like all the videos we go back and watch, it's, whether it's Koshi or Shimabuku, any of the videos I've ever seen, you're always like, okay, you're squinting and you're enlarging and you're doing this and you're like,
right.
I think he's doing it like this.
Right. And because of the pandemic, I actually, from Florida, administered Seigido Ryu's, or helped administer Seigido Ryu's first digital black belt test at all. There was this one girl, she was getting ready to go, I want to say either into the Air Force or off to college, and she was trying to get her black belt before she left. And then the pandemic happened, so she recorded herself doing the testing requirements and sent the videos to my instructor, who then sent them to 2 other black belts and myself and said, hey, just give me notes. And it changed my perspective on a lot of things, because I was like, well, one, this is really hard. Because normally when I administer a test, especially a black belt test, I want to make them sweat. I want to ask them questions. I want to be like, well, what are you doing there? Do this, do it from the other side. Like, I want to walk them through and throw them off their game a little bit, but you can't do that because it's all pre-recorded. But the other thing that it showed me was there's something here. And when I was in Florida, I had looked into online training a lot. There's a guy, DKU, who does a type of martial art that I was looking into. He has a nice online program as well. There's a place called Rising Sun Karate, which has a school in New Jersey, based out of Texas. They did online training. So I was looking at a lot of these online programs. I think that there's a place to it. I think that there is this space for it, but it can't just be like back when I was homeschooled, my mom got tired of, well, should say I got tired of my mother's version of gym class, which was exercise videos from the 80s.
I'm sorry. That's funny.
It is really funny. We even did an exercise record from the 70s.
Wow.
Which I still can hear it in my mind, because the descriptions of reach for the pizza was one of the moves, to get you to lunge and whatnot. So my mom went to the library. She's like, we got to get something that Victor likes. So she found this like karate for kids video, and that became my gym class for, a month.
And this is before you started training?
This is before I started training. Absolutely. Okay. And now here's the thing. It's just a video, and it was cardio kickboxing. It was karate, but cardio kickboxing. Yes, I learned generically, like, where my hands go, where my feet go. This is what a front stance is. This is a horseback stance or a horse stance. But I wasn't like gaining a depth of knowledge that you'd get from in person. So I came across this. I found one school that did it this way. And this is something that I thought And since the pandemic, as a lot of martial artists are probably looking at how do we do an online course? Because I have a personal training certification through ACE, the American Council for Exercise. I've got a bunch of friends. A friend of mine in St. Petersburg is a Pilates instructor. She built her whole business that she now teaches just full time Pilates, mainly off of teaching digital classes.
Wow.
And she started pre-pandemic. Two of my friends were personal trainers. 2020 happened. I reconnected with them. Like, how did you guys fare? Because I know that you guys, man, how did you fare during the shutdown? They're like, shutdown. We got more business during the shutdown. Like, one of them, him and his husband, they got stimulus checks during the shutdown, but he was still working. So they used that money to start a business, so I kind of started surrounding myself with these people who they do their stuff lives online. And how does your stuff live online and still maintain the sanctity of traditional martial arts? Because one of the things that you get that you will never get just training online, because I was teaching my mom and I and my sisters were doing Tai Chi classes. I was teaching them Tai Chi over Zoom during the pandemic.
Cool.
And it was great. It was awesome. But you miss out on that camaraderie. You don't build the same relationships.
Right.
So when my buddy was looking into, well, how do we run an online program? I was like, listen, I've seen other schools do it this way. I think this is a great idea. For us, in the Seigido Ryu sense, because that's really the only system that I've seen that I've actually walked through all the ranks of, I say you can get through, we build a system where you can get to green, which is about halfway through the ranks, is right after you stop doing the intermediate. It's right when you enter into that intermediate level of training, all online, all digital. Here are your testing requirements. I think he even talked about costs this a month. That gives you access to all of the pre-recorded videos of your rank and below. And then you get a once a week for 1 hour, a one-on-one with an instructor in that, so that you can check in with them, ask them any questions. If you want more one-on-one training, then we talk about, then we're talking about private lesson area, but that's what you get, whatever. And when it comes time to testing, you have it written down. These are your requirements for your rank. Record yourself doing the requirements, send them in with your testing fee. If you pass, we send you your rank, we send you your belt. You now get access to the next thing, all the way up to green belt. In our system, especially because green belt starts where you have to do jujitsu stuff. That's where it gets murky. Now, another school, I think the first school that I came across, it was this Rising Sun karate place that I discovered, because they had places in Texas, they had places along the East Coast. They had a similar structure. And then their idea was, when you want to go higher than this intermediate level or this beginner level, you can keep training online. You have to come and test in person. So whether or not you go and test in person at the school in Texas, or you go and test at one of the schools in the Northeast, you have to come, because now the person, it's costing them something. And I'm a person who believes that in order to learn something, especially as a skill with a depth of knowledge, like a traditional martial art, it has to cost you something.
It has to be an investment.
Right. And so for you to have to travel to invest, that is something. And you can do that up through brown belt. Then I said, for black belt, our organization, or our school, is involved in another organization known as the CBBA. It's the Christian Black Belt Association. And then they which is part of the Shio Karano Kai International. which one of my instructors was an organization that he started. They hold a once a year conference where all the schools in the organization come together. We beat on each other for a weekend.
Sounds awesome.
It's great. And honestly, the seminars, because there's generally 4 or 5 seminars going on every 45 minutes to an hour and 15 or so, Friday, Saturday, into Sunday. That's not even the best part. The best part is, 2-ish of my friends of like my core circle of guys that I talk to are from that organization, not from my school. So they're from different styles and systems that I've met over the years. I met my current Kung Fu instructor through that organization, and so you get a taste of something different. It's an opportunity to interact with different styles and systems just beyond your own. So our whole idea was, if this person wants to get their black belt, because the reason why my instructor's instructor, Soke Riedner, put this whole thing together, one of the main reasons was he met a lot of guys running schools who no longer had people above them. So they had petered out. They couldn't gain any more rank within their own systems and styles. But he'd say, I know an 8th in Taekwondo. I should hook you up with them. They haven't done it in a while, but so what the CBBA started doing at our annual conference was holding belt tests, where they would put together boards from different schools.
That's cool.
And give people opportunities, like give a third an opportunity to get his 4th, maybe not under his original instructor, but he's not under him anymore.
Yeah.
It's
a problem. It's a problem that exists all over the place. And I've seen a lot of solutions, and I don't like some of them, and I'm not going to go any more specific than that. But some of the solutions out there I don't like. I like that because it's an attempt to continue the values that were inherent up through, right? Like there's a trajectory, whatever school you're in, whatever system style, there's a trajectory. And I think trying to continue that is of value.
One of the coolest experiences actually that I've ever had martially was at one of these conferences. I was a brown belt. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term Soke Reme. Okay, so it's a Japanese term. It basically just means a board of 10ths.
Okay.
So it's basically a bunch of 10th degree black belts from different styles and systems, and they sit on a board. And it's generally something that happens. My instructor did it because Seigido Ryu is his system. He founded it, and he presented his entire system and curriculum in 1 3 to 5 hour session to this board of 10th degree black belts who were masters and the soke, or the master instructors of their own system. Then those 4 guys sign a certification that says, we certify this as an effective martial art. When I was a brown belt at one of these conferences, when it was back in New Jersey, because it moves around to different places to make it equally convenient and inconvenient for people, depending on where it is. There was this gentleman by the name of Dave Scrow who was putting together a system. So Soke Riedner, who passed away just recently, but back then he was like, well, he's like, we're having the conference. I'm going to have all of these masters here from all of these different Japanese, Korean, Chinese systems. We'll put together a board, and you'll stand before us during free time, present us your entire curriculum, and we can get you certified so that your system is legitimate and backed, not just by the organization of the Christian Black Belt Association, but by all of these different already certified arts that exist.
Right.
My instructor was one of those guys that sat on the Soke Reme, and he came up to myself and this other guy, John, that I trained with, and was like, hey, Mr. Scrow needs someone to beat on for the next 4 hours. Both of you come with me. So as a punk brown belt who is 16, 17 years old, I got to sit in and watch an entire process of how a board of masters goes about certifying a brand new, not art, because there's nothing new under the sun. Everything has been done or stolen by someone else, but a brand new system in the way in which it is taught. I got to sit in and watch, which was really cool.
That's really neat.
Yeah. So going back to the training online thing, one of the things that I said to my buddy was, I would say that if this person would be serious about wanting to train and get their black belt, you got to make a requirement, in my opinion, that they spend X amount of hours in-person training with a Seigido Ryu school, and just leave it vague. Because again, there has to be a cost in order for something to have value. And leave it in that person's hand. I mean, if they are a white belt and they find themselves close to a school that teaches the style, let them drive. Let them drive and spend a few hours. Hey, listen, I'm going to need to do this eventually for my black belt. I was wondering if I could put in some time training under you. Let them make the journey once a year to wherever the conferences that we have. Because my instructor he always teaches at least 2 to 3 seminars. A lot of times if I'm there or if Anthony's there, they have us teach a seminar, which we teach what we know. I mean, we've both cross-trained in other things, but we have the most time in our art, and that's just what we default to. So that's what we teach.
I got it. Makes sense. So given the change, I mean, we kind of skipped over the Florida through New Jersey,
yeah,
out west. You know, we don't have time to talk about everything.
Yeah,
but what I'm finding interesting in what you're saying, I haven't heard any reluctance in any of this. I haven't heard any regret, any disappointment, any sorrow that you are now physically distant from your home martial arts school.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, I think I learned more in the last 18 months. Maybe not technically speaking, but martially speaking, at my home dojo in New Jersey than I had in the previous 20 some odd years.
Wow.
Because I was there all the time. And the jiu-jitsu thing is the least of things that I helped my instructor with in that time. We solidified a weapons program. Weapons used to be something that our school just taught on occasion, because, you know, back in the 70s, when my instructor was trying to find a school to train in, when he was, you know, his own punk kid, him and his friends would just spar with weapons. They would spar with bokens. They would spar with sai. That was the only traditional weapons training that he did. And so that's kind of what he brought in to our school. And I'm like, I've got time. We have access to this school. I'll run a nunchuck class a couple times, which I did. And that helped us solidify, okay, well, what do we want a weapons program to look like? You're teaching, you know, traditional sword. I'm teaching weapons. You have a little thing. He had a little thing scribbled on paper so that he could figure out who had taken what, how many times. And we helped, you know, we developed that. But as far as regret is pointless. It truly is. I am a young guy, but I don't feel young. I've had a lot of stuff happen to me. I've moved a lot. And I'd say, besides when people ask me, what's your favorite movie? My least favorite question is, if you could live anywhere, where would you want to live? Like, I don't care. I don't know. I don't really care where I live. I care more about the people and the whys in which I'm there, what has brought me there. Life is an adventure, and I'm on it. And so if that means that, you know, I'm in Florida for 10 years, then that's where I am. Would I ever willingly move back there? No, I had a lot of stuff happen to me in Florida. My move from New Jersey to Florida left me very isolated
Hmm.
from my support system, my dojo, my family, my friends. A lot of overlapping in that when I was in Florida, and I separated myself from that, and I paid very dearly for it. I had a lot of hurt that went on during that. My move from New Jersey, because that's what led me back there, but my move from New Jersey to Kansas, immensely different in just my attitude, in which I've seen now what terribly doesn't work. I don't regret any of those things because I wouldn't know now. I wouldn't know how not to be. You know, my friend Anthony, who was a big part of that support system when I first left and moved to Florida, he's not in New Jersey anymore. His wife's in the Coast Guard. They move every 4 years. He was in Texas, and now that he's got, I think, 3 years ish left in Virginia before he has to get up and move again. That's why he's not looking to open a school, because what does even a school look like where he's going to have to leave, you know? But here's the thing, this is a blessing that came out of COVID. Oh, we don't have to be in the same room. We don't have to be in the same state in order to be in relationship with each other. Anthony and I talk to each other every single week. Two of our other friends, Noah and Leroy, who are guys that we know through the CBBA. One of them lives in the Midwest. One of them lives in Philly or just outside of Philly. The four of us get together and we talk. We try to talk once a month, once every other month, because we can, so we're each on these individual adventures in our lives as young men, taking whatever the day comes before us, and we're just being smart about it. I remember I'm an avid reader, as you probably can see from behind me, and this shelf goes the entire length of the room, all the way down in that direction. And so it is full, and this is what's left of my library. I sold a lot of it. But one of my favorite book series is the Chronicles of Narnia. And there's a time where Lucy, one of the main characters, they don't do something, and something really bad happens, and a bunch of people die because they didn't turn left when they should have turned left. They went right. And later on, she meets Aslan, and the lion, the powerful talking lion, and she's like, what would have happened if I had just listened to you in the beginning? Would all those people still be alive? And he says something to her to the extent of, ours is not to know what would have happened had we done this, but to do with what is before us, what we can, to do what we can with what we have. And I always took that to heart. And there's another time in that series where someone gets up and they're about to go into battle, and they say that they make the statement of, let's go to sleep, and tomorrow let's just take whatever adventures before us. And I'm like, that's such a martial arts mindset. And it always resonated with me, is that if I'm in Kansas, I'm in Kansas. If 2 years from now we corporately decide, you know what, this isn't working out, and we have opportunity to move to California. This is the last place on earth I'd ever thought I would ever be willing to move. I'd move.
Yeah.
If something draws me there, I would move. Is there sadness? Yeah. In the perfect world, I'd be able to walk out the front door tonight and teleport back to my home dojo and teach my, adults only beginners class that I helped start, that my instructor had to take over for me. But I can't. So my only hope now is to look ahead. And what looking ahead right now looks like is, I want to get Karen to the place where she feels comfortable, at least with the beginner stuff. And then we have our ear to the ground for opportunity to start teaching. I personally believe that myself, my dad said this once to me when I graduated from college. He goes, if a doctor has no patience, they're no less a doctor. I am a teacher. Martial arts has given me so much. I love it. I think I said it before. I think I've heard you say something along the same lines. Everyone should train in martial arts. it is benefit beyond learning how to fight and defend yourself. I think there's a place for, I just listened to your episode about when you and Andrew were talking about whether or not martial arts instructors make bad self-defense instructors. And I agree with a lot of stuff that you were saying, because I have witnessed us teaching a technique in self-defense that to me makes perfect sense, because the movement that it was using is a movement that I personally have been practicing for 20 years. Right. Not a movement that some of the other people in the class have. They learned it 5 minutes ago. So for them, I'm like, they're not going to do that in this event. But I've been given so much more than just an ability to fight from martial arts. I had a acquaintance of mine just stopped training halfway through the ranks at his traditional Okinawan karate school because it wasn't giving him what he needed. And I struggled, and I kind of stayed silent for it because he posted a TikTok about it. And a lot of people gave him hate. You didn't give it enough time. You're really a disappointment. His instructor, basically, he called his instructor to tell them vocally, this month is going to be my last month. I'm going to finish out the month, but I'm going to go elsewhere. You know, he really wanted to go to an MMA school. Basically, he wanted to learn kickboxing and grappling because he wants to learn how to fight. And his instructor had a very negative response to that and said, don't even bother coming in the rest of the month, and removed him. And like, I think that there's wrong in both those things, in all those things. But I understand the hurt that it comes from. And I struggled for a while because he posted a lot of videos. This is not a decision that he came to lightly. But if he was just in that school to learn how to fight, he was missing out on an aspect of other things that he was getting for his life. And I think that there's so much more involved in, you know, martial arts that isn't done. Even in my home instructor school. And again, I love him to death. I owe Kiyoshi D'Angelo so much. But like I told you, I've disagreed with some things. But when it comes to our public face and being in front of students, it's his school. Yeah. It's his system. The answer is, as we always say, us. Yes, I understand. I agree. Right? But then there are other things that he's told me, you know, when I ran a school in Florida, he goes, that's your school. I don't care about that. Do what you want. He's like, as long as your technique is taught the way I want it to taught, because that's the part that belongs to me. And you're representing me in what you're teaching, how you teach it.
Yeah. He cared about the what, not the why or the how.
Right.
Or the
Yeah.
when,
You can go about doing it. And that's why I'm a teacher. I don't care. Even when like I worked in a church for a while as an associate youth pastor. I've worked for an organization called Young Life, running after school programs for teens in high schools and middle schools and stuff. I don't like to preach at people. My favorite moment, and I used to, because I was one of the only substitute teachers who hated when I was given busy work. I was like, just let me teach. Give me something that you want me to teach, because I like it when I can bring a student or anybody into the moment where they are either understand something enough because they've come to the conclusion themselves, or I can ask them the right question that makes them want to find out more on their own. I've always taught like that. Because I think if you just say, throw a kick this way, that person may throw that kick that way, but they're not going to understand why they throw the kick this way. They're not going to understand, well, better is a bad word, but I'm going to use it. Why throwing it your way is better. It might not be better. It might be better for me. It might not be better for them because their body's different. So there are things that I've always wanted to do in a school. And even when I taught in Florida, I taught out of a church gymnasium, and I taught out of a bodybuilder athletic facility. So I didn't have a space that was my own. I wasn't allowed to be there 5 days, 7 days a week. So there are things that like I always want always wanted to implement within a school that I wanted to teach, that I'm excited to get the opportunity to do. And one of those things has to do with how are you teaching your girlfriend when she's technically a lower rank than you? I am super uncomfortable with the term Shihan, immensely uncomfortable with it. I loved when I was a Renshi. I mean, I didn't love it because I didn't feel deserving of that promotion because it came out of nowhere. My instructor came. He came to see how my students were doing in Florida for the first time. He was visiting his family there. He came to visit. I was excited because I figure my students are going to get to learn from him. I was a third at the time. And so he's like, I didn't bring my gi. I'd still like to come to class, which terrified me because I know what that meant. He sat behind my students and watched me teach for an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm cringing just hearing this.
And then like the worst thing was halfway through my lesson, he gets up and without a word walks out of the room. Didn't know that he walked to his truck to get my certificate and to get a belt because he promoted me at the end of that class in front of my students, which was a high honor for me. But that terrified me.
Because you didn't know why.
Because I didn't know why. Yeah. But I liked the term Renshi in Japanese means polished instructor, which I prefer that term. I actually still have a student who refers to me as that because my school shut down and that's what she knew me as. I'm not going to correct it. I'm okay with it because that's what I feel like I am. And so when I got promoted to Shihan, which everyone will say means master, it's 5th in our system is the first master rank. Ooh, I hate that. I'm so grossly uncomfortable with being taught of being a master and what that entails. But because I'm me and I'm hyper obsessed with things, I started breaking down the actual Japanese term, and I found that master, like most Japanese to English translations, is terrible. It's a terrible translation. And even like the word do at the end of Seigido Karate Do, which we say means way of, do meaning way, not accurate. It's more accurately the way a man goes or the path or journey. Like it has so much deeper meaning than just the word. So I looked it up and I got okay with the term Shihan because a more literal translation of the word means masterful instructor, or basically implying that your instruction is at a masterful level. You're beginning to master the art of passing on what you know to someone else. I'm way more okay with that because off the mat, I'm no one's master. My instructor is my friend off of my mat. I respect him because I think every person is due respect. One of the tattoos that I thought very long and hard about getting is on the inside of my arm. It's the Japanese word Ronin, masterless wanderer is kind of what it means. And I got it because my instructor and my in essence my kung fu instructor, they're people I'm learning from, and I respect them immensely. I respect their martial art, otherwise I wouldn't be learning from them. But I respect them as humans so much more. That's why I want to learn from them. Their word is not law to me. There isn't a man alive, legality, politics stuff aside, that could look me in the eye and say, you have to do this because I said so, that I would listen to it. Like, each person is their own man. You know, I have no control or say over anyone. No one has any control or say over anyone else. I am tempered by the fact that every human being that I interact with, I believe, has value based solely on the fact that they are a human being. And I have to respect that value. How much more or less respect they get after that is up to them. And so when I have students, yeah, I'm going to be your Shihan. I'm going to be, if they want to call me sensei, I still have an instructor shirt that has sensei embroidered on it. I'm totally fine with wearing that and not going to go and get it re-embroidered. If they want to call me, I had students who knew me just because I ran an a Saturday morning boxing program in Florida for youth out of the church. That's how I started before I even started my martial arts program. Some of those boxers came and became students of mine. They still struggled with calling me Vic when we were in gis. I didn't correct them because I am that person. I am Vic. I know that they don't mean disrespect. If someone calls me,
I think that's the key right there.
Right.
Is the why.
Yeah. I've known other instructors who you don't call them master. You don't call them what their rank is. They get super disrespected.
Even off the mats.
Even off the mat. And I'm like, you're not. You're like, I've had bosses. I've worked a lot of different jobs in my life. I think I'm at 38. I think,
wow.
Yeah. And it's generally the reaction that I get from a lot of people. And I don't think that it's a long thing. My record is I've held 5 at the same time. I did that for 6 months.
I've done that. I've done 4.
Highly unrecommended.
No, it's not a good idea.
I can do 2, maybe 3 if one of those is like a freelance consulting thing where I can do my own hours. Is doable. But anyway, I used to have bosses guilt trip me all the time. We really need you. Listen, you need to. Well, why can't you come in? Well, one, it's my day off. Right. But why can't you come in? I don't need to tell you that. Well, you do. And it's like, well, no. See, because when I'm on the clock, I'm your employee. When I'm off the clock, we have no relationship. Therefore, I really don't owe you why I'm not coming in on my day off. And I recently had one of our students, he's 17. He got his black belt, got his first job so that and I was like, listen, I'm going to tell you something that I wish that someone had told me when I was a kid. One, if someone's yelling at you, and arguing at you, not with you, but yelling at you and belittling you, you don't owe that person the respect to stand there and be their verbal punching bag. You have every right to just say, this is not constructive, excuse me, and walk away. You're not held captive there. The second thing is that your boss's authority ends at the door when you're clocked in and out. And whenever I get a new job, what I tell them is, when I'm clocked in and I'm in this building, I am 100% yours. I will break my back and bend over backwards for you, doing the best that I can do for you. But if you make a schedule and I'm supposed to be out by 2, I have other priorities, other pursuits. I'm going to clock out and I'm going to walk out that door and not even think about work, because that's the level that I'm at. Right. And obviously this is for like hourly positions where you do clock in and out, and where I'm just at a low level position. And I draw that line. Now, the last place that I drew that line was when I worked at a Wawa pumping gas. Did my boss call me in on days that I wasn't working and ask if I could come in? Yes. Did I go in? Yes. Did I try to go above and beyond? Did I stay late when I could? Yes. But people have this tendency to give them an inch, it's an old cliche, but it's true. Give them an inch, they'll take a mile. If you set the precedent of people that you are their servant, they have to listen to you no matter what you say. That's what they're going to do. And I've been used and abused by many people that I've worked for, because I tried to always go in when they called me, always be available. and I got no result except I made other people richer. And I gave bosses the ability to stay home. Now, when I'm given a project and I have authority, when I've been a manager of places, well, now all of a sudden my level of responsibility changes. Now I am more responsible when I'm not in the building. Now I do have to think about, well, when I clock in or when I clock out, I'm also responsible. I got to be there, because if one of the employees gets sick and an emergency happens, that then falls on me. And I take that responsibility, understanding that it's not just a pay raise. I view martial arts instruction as that as well. If I get a student gets in a fight outside of school, I'm responsible for them. Right? We had a hard, fast rule. If you use anything that we teach you outside of this dojo, you were immediately expelled from this dojo. I've only seen one person get expelled for the dojo, and it was not for fighting. But we make that hard, fast rule so that people understand that when I do this to someone outside, this is a serious matter. This is last result. There's another thing that I heard. I think it was you or Jeremy who said, or maybe it was one of your other guests. I don't know. I heard it on the Whistlekick podcast that we train so hard every day that there's a 5% chance that what we train is going to come into play in our given day-to-day life. But if it does come into play, it's going to be the most important thing that we do that day.
Right.
And that's insane when you think about it. But on the flip side, that's where it comes in that I used to be an angry kid. Martial arts helped me not be as angry anymore. And that has nothing to do with the fact that I now can punch my fist through a bag and I can throw someone twice my size. I've always used martial arts to center myself. It's the place where I can go and be completely present in the moment, not thinking about past, not thinking about future, not worrying about any of that stuff. But what I'm doing is right here.
I love it. It's a great place to start to wind down.
Yeah.
We've only had three, maybe four subjects we've covered today. And I liked how they threaded together. You have a podcast of your own.
Yeah.
Talk about that for a moment.
So it's called the Tangents Podcast, because my cousin loves math humor. So it's called Tangents, but we refer to it as tan X, as if you're finding the tangent line when you're making a graph. Because the definition of a tangent is a point that branches off of another point and never yet finds its way back to the main point. You know me as much as you do. My cousin is me 10 years ago. There's a 10-year difference between pretty much everything, actually. He's 10 years younger than me. He started training the same time that I did, but 10 years. He's been in the arts 10 years less than I have. We've had some branches and delineations in it. He is 6'4". I am not. But we are both Guarinos through and through. And when we sit and talk, we sometimes apologize to the people who have to bear witness to it. Because some of the stuff that we get off on is insane. And so
I've listened to your show a bit.
So one day when I was driving, when Karen and I were still long distance, I was driving back to the airport. And on the highway, for about 5 to 10 miles, all of the electricity just went out on the highway. Traffic lights, businesses that line the highway. This is the freakiest thing. One of the freakiest things that ever happened to me. And it happened 3 times in a 2-month period of time.
Wow.
It was right the year after. It was 2021. It's after the shutdown. And I think the grid just was not used to the strain of power again. And they kept having to cycle stuff off in order to do repairs. And so I was talking to him, and I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while. And then that happened. And he goes, dude, don't tell me anymore. Just call me on Discord when you get home. So we just called on Discord, and he recorded it. And we just talked for like 3 hours about, and it was some weird conversation. So then we just started getting together every week and talking about it. And it turned into this thing called the Tangents Podcast, where we stream live on Twitch. And then probably a week later on Spotify and Apple Podcast and Google Podcast and Anchor, you can find us on all those places.
Yeah. What are the relevant usernames for any of that?
So this is where it all comes under is Realm, REALM of Logres, LOGRES is all of the relevant usernames for that. And that's because there's other things and other projects that we're working on in the background of the Tangents Podcast, that the Tangents Podcast is just underneath that. So that's what that's what the Instagram is. It's all one word, it's all lowercase, and there's a link in the Instagram, one of those handy link trees.
Yeah, and we're gonna drop that link in here.
That you can find all of the stuff on.
Awesome.
But we refer to that first season as season 0, which you will not find. He still has it somewhere, and it is awful. They're riddled with technical issues, so unfocused. But now we've settled into a good 3-week pattern, which was completely by accident. His sister sent us she made our logo for us.
Cool.
And she's made 3 different colors. And she's like, pick the one that you like, pink, green, and blue. And we're like, I like them all, but we both like the blue one. And when we started what was referred to as season 1, we did it on the topic of body dysmorphic disorder, just something that I happened to be reading about. I've dealt with it myself personally. I tell people all the time, like, I'm a personal trainer. I have fitness is a huge part of my life. Martial arts is a huge part of my life. I grew up with people in love and compassion telling me, Victor, you need to eat more. So when I tell you and other people, the version of me that you see is not the version of myself that I have in my own brain. It's taken years of having to study the body, another martial arts thing, for me to understand that I'm not a small person. I'm not weak and inadequate. And so that was a topic that was near and dear to my heart. And I was like, I don't want to just talk about it. So we took 3 weeks, and him and I studied hard. Like, we had medical papers. So we talked for like 40 minutes, not giving our opinions, just basically reading research and reading through paper and being someone's Wikipedia. That's the way that we looked at it.
The subject. Yeah.
And then we spent the second half of that episode talking about it. And then the very following week, we're like, we just need a break. So we decided that we were just going to, every 3 weeks, we were going to research
I love it.
a thing. And so basically, what we call the blue episodes are mind episodes, where we do a heavy researched episode. And you're going to talk about something like, I know this week it's going to be on the topic of tea. So my cousin was given a book by his grandmother called The Story of Tea. And it is exactly that. It is how tea and the process of tea making started and how it permeated the world. And so it's going to be basically me interviewing him on the topic of tea. And then we will generally have a green episode after that, which are generally chaotic because we're coming off of a heavily scripted, focused episode. But we try to focus on what we refer to as our body goals. Things that we're trying to do better for ourselves body. And that could be like, for me, 1 week I was like, I want to work out more. I want to make sure that I'm at least working out, or I'm doing my Kung Fu training and my Seigido Ryu training consistently enough that I'm at least maintaining my level. For him, that same week, it was, I need to drink less coffee. Just things that will better ourselves on the physical aspect. Then the pink episodes, which we just posted one that was just called Tired Souls, because we both had a week from hell, are just more practices of meditative nature for our spirits, for our souls, what we can do better for our emotional center. Because regardless of what an individual's religious or faith-based beliefs are, I have very strong ones. I've studied others outside of my own. All of the main ones have this same imagery of body, mind, and spirit. They all agree that the human has at least these three aspects of their life. So we've kind of built the structure of the Tangents podcast to every 3 weeks, we're talking about the mind. Every 3 weeks, we're talking about the body. And every 3 weeks, we're talking about the soul. And completely happenstance, it just so happens that it takes about 90 days to build a habit, right? And so in talking about things and setting goals for ourselves, him not to drink as much coffee for the next 3 weeks, me to spend 5 minutes a day, in just quiet meditation with nothing, no background, nothing but maybe like background white noise. If I can focus and spend 3 weeks doing that, my soul is going to be in a better place than it was 3 days ago. If you can spend 3 weeks working out on a consistent schedule, your body is going to be in a better place than it was 3 weeks ago. If you can spend 3 weeks studying a topic, I'm currently, he's doing the tea. I'm already preparing for episode 1 of season 2, which is going to be the 16th of January. I'm reading a book called Becoming a Supple Leopard. It's a book all
Kelly
about
Starrett.
Yep, it's all about movement. And so it's going to be opposite. He's going to be interviewing me on what I've learned from it. Nice. One of my fellow students in my Bagua instructor highly recommended the book from me, and it gels so perfectly with all of the other stuff that I'm doing in my life. Right on. And I love it. So that's kind of the cycle that we fell into happily.
Cool. I love it. I hope people do check it out. It is good stuff. And from those, from that username, people can get a hold of you and find you and see all the things that you've got going on. You know the show, so you know how we close up. And I'm going to turn it over to you and say, what do you want to leave everybody with today? How do you want to close?
I don't think I'll close the way that we've been starting to close our show, because it is such a martial principle, and it's a quote by that has haunted me. Like I think you can relate to this. There are quotes that are like good and meaningful and resonate with you. Then there are things that people say that haunt you your entire life, meaning no matter what you do, they stay with you. It's kind of like when one of your students, I don't know, says something that you've always said to them back to you, which I've had happen to me. Spit your own advice back into you. But it's a quote by I think Aristotle, quoting Plato. Oh no, quoting Socrates, is supposedly something that he said at his final trial before he was put to death, is that the unexamined life isn't worth living. It is the perfect martial principle, because if you enter a traditional martial art and you just punch and kick, and you can hit the bag with some modicum of force, and you say that's good, you have done martial arts. You're not a martial artist. You haven't approached that kick from a martial arts mindset, in the sense of, how am I generating power? Examine that kick. Is there a way that I'm telegraphing? Can I make it faster? Can I make it sneakier? Can I make it more powerful? Can I make it more proficient in my movement? And then if you take that aspect out of the martial arts, what am I eating? Do I need 4 zebra cakes today? Could I eat more vegetables, right? Because there are definitely people who just, you can exist in life or you can live your life. And I think that if you don't examine your life, then you're living a life that's not worth living. Not saying that that person's not worth living, but they're not living up to their potential. That's my goal as a martial arts instructor. This is my goal in life with what I believe in, both personally and spiritually, is I just want people to be the best version of themselves. And I think that's what martial arts gives them the opportunity to learn. Right now, you are a version of yourself, and that's great. We are all in process. I want to help you in whatever little or large way be the best version. And if everybody did that, if everybody was just about helping the people around them be the best version of themselves, it'd be a crazy world that we would live in. And that's kind of what I would love to build towards.
I really enjoyed getting to know Victor better through this conversation. I've gotten to know him a bit over the last few months and really enjoy talking to him. Of course, here on Martial Arts Radio, we get to talk at length. And so we did. We had a good talk, and I learned a lot about him, and I learned a lot in general. I always learn from our guests, and today was no exception. Victor, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you. Appreciate you willing to come on and share your time and just go wherever the conversation took us. Listeners, go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com for photos, links, videos, all the good stuff. Anything we talked about in today's episode, you will find linked there. Some of it makes it into the show notes of your podcast app, but the full experience is only available at whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. Do you have a martial arts school? Are you responsible for a martial arts school? Would you like some help with your martial arts school? We have a consulting offering, and I'm not going to be modest. We crush it. And if you would like some help growing your school, increasing revenue, increasing profit, increasing student count, solving particular challenges, we can help you with all that and so much more. Go to whistlekick.com, go to the school section, and find consulting under that heading. If you want to bring me in for a seminar, we can do that too. Constantly booking seminars into the future, because we can't book them into the past. Email me, jeremy@whistlekick.com. Our social media is @whistlekick everywhere you might think of. That's all for now. Until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.